The woman pregnant with twins was left alone, but the wealthy man she met at the clinic made a proposal that would change her life forever. The sharp sound of the ambulance siren cut through the night air as Amina Sefu clung to the stretcher, her eyes wide with fear and pain. At 28, pregnant with twins and completely alone, she had never imagined her life would come to this. The contractions came too soon, catching her off guard in her small Nairobi apartment. "Take a deep breath, we're almost there," said the paramedic, his calm voice contrasting with the chaos around them. Amina nodded, unable to speak as another contraction hit her. Her heart was racing not just from the physical pain, but from the terror of the unknown that awaited her. The ambulance doors suddenly opened and Amina was quickly rushed to the emergency ward of Kenyatta National Hospital. The fluorescent lights momentarily blinded her as she was pushed through the busy corridors. A woman 32 weeks pregnant with twins in premature labor shouted one of the paramedics as he handed Amina over to the care of the hospital staff. In the midst of the confusion, Amina felt a gentle hand touch her shoulder. She turned her head and met a pair of compassionate brown eyes. "Hi, I'm Dr. Kwame Inotino. I'm going to take care of you and your babies," he said in a reassuring voice. "You're in good hands, Amina. We're going to do everything we can to make sure you and your children are okay." Dr. Kwame's words calmed Amina's panic a little, but they couldn't completely erase the fear that consumed her as she was wheeled into the delivery room. She couldn't help but notice the contrast between the well-dressed doctor and her own precarious situation. Hours passed in a blur of pain, effort, and anxiety. Amina fought bravely, her strength almost running out several times. Dr. Kwame remained by her side, his presence constant and encouraging. Finally, in the early morning, the twin cries of two premature but healthy babies echoed through the room. Tears of relief and joy streamed down Amina's exhausted face as she held her children for the first time. "Congratulations," Amina said Dr. Kwame with a warm smile. "You have a beautiful, strong little boy and girl." As she admired the tiny faces of her children, the reality of Amina's situation began to sink in. She was alone, without a job, and now with two premature babies to look after. Fear began to creep back into her heart. Dr. Kwame noticed the change in her expression. "Is everything all right, Amina? Is there someone we can call for you?" Amina swallowed, trying to hold back the tears. "No, doctor, there's no one." The doctor frowned, his expression a mixture of concern and something else Amina couldn't decipher. "I see," he said softly. "Don't worry, we'll look after you and the babies for as long as it takes." In the days that followed, Amina spent most of her time in the neonatal intensive care unit, watching her children through the incubators. She named them Zuri and Kato, names that meant strength and resolute determination, qualities she hoped her children would have to face the world ahead of them. Dr. Kwame visited often, always with a kind smile and words of encouragement. Amina couldn't help but notice how he went above and beyond his medical duties, spending extra time with her and the twins, patiently explaining each procedure and progress. One afternoon, while Amina was humming softly to Zuri and Kato, Dr. Kwame entered the NICU with a serious expression. "Amina, can we talk for a moment?" he asked, guiding her to a quiet corner of the room. Amina's heart raced, fearing bad news. "Is something wrong with the babies, doctor?" No, he reassured her quickly. "Zuri and Kato are progressing wonderfully. In fact, they should be discharged soon." Relief flooded Amina, followed immediately by a fresh wave of anxiety. Where would she go with two newborns and no resources? As if reading her thoughts, Dr. Kwame continued. "Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I have a proposal to make." Amina looked at him curiously, noticing for the first time the nervousness in his normally confident eyes. "Over the last few days, I've seen what kind of dedicated and loving mother you are, Amina," he began. "I've also seen that you're facing significant challenges. I'd like to help." Amina felt her throat tighten. "What do you mean, doctor?" Dr. Kwame took a deep breath before continuing. "I have a large house, more than enough for a family. I'd like to offer you and the twins a place to stay for as long as you need it." Amina's eyes widened in shock. "But why?" "You hardly know me." A sad smile crossed the doctor's face. Let's just say I understand more than you realize about being alone when you need support the most. No one should have to go through that, especially not with 2 newborns to look after." Amina was speechless, her heart beating furiously as she considered the unexpected offer. Part of her wanted to accept immediately, grateful for the lifeline on offer. But another part hesitated, years of mistrust and disappointment making her question Dr. Kwame's motives. I don't know what to say," she finally managed to reply. "You don't have to decide now," said Dr. Kwame gently. "Think about it. Talk to the social worker if you want, but know that the offer stands with no strings attached." With one last reassuring smile, he turned to leave, leaving Amina struggling with a turbulent mix of emotions. As she looked back at her sleeping children, she wondered if this could be the chance she had never dared to hope for, an opportunity to give Zuri and Kato the life they deserved. But as night fell over Nairobi, Amina couldn't help but wonder what really motivated Dr. Kwame's generosity, and what consequences this decision could have for the future of her and her children. With these questions weighing heavily on her mind, Amina fell asleep in the chair next to the incubators, unaware of how her life was about to change forever. The days following Dr. Kwame Otieno's proposal were a whirlwind of emotions for Amina Sefu as she watched Zuri and Kato gain strength day by day in the NICU, her mind constantly conflicted over the doctor's unexpected offer. One sunny afternoon, as Amina hummed softly to the twins, the hospital's social worker, Sophia Wanjiru, quietly entered the room. "How are our little fighters today?" Sophia asked with a warm smile. Amina returned the smile, her eyes shining with maternal pride. "They're progressing wonderfully. Dr. Kwame says they could be discharged soon." The mention of the doctor's name made Sophia arch an eyebrow. "Speaking of which, Amina, I heard about the offer he made. Have you had time to think about it?" Amina sighed, her fingers playing nervously with the edge of Zuri's blanket. "Honestly, Sophia, I can't think of anything else. Part of me wants to accept immediately. I mean, it's an incredible opportunity for the twins, but you have doubts," Sophia added softly. Amina nodded. "It's all so strange. Why would a successful doctor offer his home to a stranger and her newborn babies? It seems too good to be true." Sophia pulled up a chair and sat down next to Amina. "I understand your concerns, Amina. It's natural to be cautious, but let me tell you something about Dr. Kwame that might help clear things up." Amina leaned in, curious. "Kwame, Dr. Otieno lost his wife 5 years ago," Sophia began, her voice soft. "She was pregnant with twins, just like you. There were complications and well, he lost all 3. Amina's heart clenched at the revelation. "Oh my God, that's terrible." Sophia nodded sadly. "It was devastating for him, but instead of shutting down, Kwame channeled his pain into helping others. He specialized in high-risk obstetrics, and has been tireless in his work ever since." The pieces began to fit together in Amina's mind. Dr. Kwame's kindness, his dedication that went beyond the call of duty. It all made sense now. "I think seeing you alone and struggling with premature twins touched something deep in him," Sophia continued. "Kwame has a huge heart, Amina. His offer is genuine, of that I'm sure." Amina was silent for a moment, processing the information. But what if it's too much for him? What if the twins bring back painful memories? Sophia smiled gently. "That's a valid concern, but I've known Kwame for years. He wouldn't make that offer if he wasn't ready. Besides, I believe it could be as good for him as it is for you and the twins." At that moment, as if sensing the intensity of the conversation, Zuri and Kato began to whimper softly. Amina immediately turned to them, her maternal instinct taking over as she soothed the babies. Amina felt a sudden clarity looking at her children's little faces. She knew she would do anything to give them the best chance in life. "I think I'm going to accept Dr. Kwame's offer," she finally said, her voice steady despite the tremor of nervousness. Sophia smiled, squeezing Amina's shoulder in support. "I think you're making the right decision, Amina. But remember, we'll be here for you, no matter what." In the days that followed, Amina and Dr. Kwame began to make plans for the transition. Kwame, as he insisted Amina call him, was incredibly attentive, making sure everything was ready to welcome the twins. The day before the babies were due to be discharged, Kwame invited Amina to visit the house. As they drove through the tree-lined streets of Karen, Amina felt a mixture of anxiety and excitement. The house was a beautiful, modern mansion with large windows and a welcoming veranda. When Kwame opened the front door, Amina was greeted by an elegant but cozy interior. "Let me show you the baby's room," Kwame said, guiding her up the stairs. Amina was speechless as she entered the room. It was a large sunny space decorated in soft shades of green and yellow. 2 white cribs were positioned side by side with delicate mobiles hanging over them. A comfortable nursing chair was positioned near the window, overlooking the back garden. "Kwame, It's perfect," Amina whispered, tears forming in her eyes. The doctor smiled, but Amina noticed a glimmer of emotion in his eyes. "I'm glad you like it. I had saved some things from when." His voice faltered for a moment before he pulled himself together. "Well, I thought it was time to put them to good use." Amina felt her heart clench at the admission. Impulsively, she took Kwame's hand and squeezed it. "Thank you for everything." Kwame returned the squeeze, a silent understanding passing between them. Back at the hospital that evening, as Amina prepared for her last night in the NICU before taking Zuri and Kato home, she couldn't help but reflect on the strange turn her life had taken. Just a few weeks ago, she was alone and terrified, facing an uncertain future. Now, thanks to the unexpected generosity of a stranger, no, not a stranger anymore, she had hope. As she cradled Kato, who had woken up for a night feed, Amina made a silent promise. She would do everything in her power to give her children the life they deserved. And maybe, just maybe, she could help heal Kwame's broken heart in the process. What Amina didn't know was that her decision to accept Kwame's offer would trigger a series of events that would change not only her life, but the lives of everyone around her in ways she could never have imagined. As night fell over Nairobi, Amina fell asleep in the NICU chair for the last time, dreaming of the future that awaited her and her children in Kwame's house in Karen. The soft sound of a baby crying echoed through the monitor, waking Amina from a light sleep. She blinked, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar room before remembering where she was: Kwame's house, her new home. Getting up quickly, Amina crossed the hall to the twins' room. The soft light of dawn filtered through the curtains, illuminating Zuri's anguished face. "Shush, it's all right, my love," Amina murmured, picking the baby up. She settled into the nursing chair, Zuri instantly calming down as she was fed. As she breastfed, Amina reflected on the last 2 weeks. The transition to Kwame's house had been smoother than she had expected, but not without its challenges. Kwame had proved to be an attentive host and a surprisingly strong support, but Amina still struggled with feelings of inadequacy and guilt. A soft knock on the door brought her out of her thoughts. Kwame appeared, already dressed for work, but with dark circles under his eyes. "Good morning," he said softly, smiling at the scene before him. "How are our little warriors this morning?" Amina couldn't help but notice the hour. In his sentence, an increasingly frequent occurrence that both warmed her and made her nervous. "Zuri was hungry, but Kato is still asleep," she replied. "You look tired, Kwame. Don't tell me you've been up all night again." Kwame shrugged, a guilty smile on his face. "I had some files to review." Besides, he hesitated for a moment. Sometimes it's hard to sleep with the sounds of babies. It brings back memories. Amina's heart squeezed. Despite his constant kindness, she sometimes forgot the pain Kwame carried. "Kwame, if this is too much for you..." "No," he interrupted her gently. "It's not too much. It's good. Difficult at times, yes, but good." His eyes softened as he looked at Zuri. "They bring life to this house again." A moment of silent understanding passed between them, broken by Kato's sudden cry. Kwame reacted instantly, moving to pick up the baby before Amina could even stand. "I'll take care of him," Kwame said, picking Kato up with an ease that surprised Amina. "You finish feeding Zuri." Amina watched in amazement as Kwame soothed Kato, murmuring softly to the baby. It was a scene that was becoming more and more common, and yet it never failed to touch her. Later that morning, after Kwame had left for work, Amina found herself alone with the twins for the first time in days. Determined not to be too dependent on Kwame, she decided to venture out of the house. stowing the babies in the double stroller. Amina went for a walk through the neighborhood. The cobbled streets of Karen were quiet at that time of the morning, with only a few early morning joggers and people walking their dogs. As she walked, Amina couldn't help but notice the curious looks she received. She knew she must look out of place, a young single mother with twins in one of Nairobi's wealthiest neighborhoods. Insecurity began to set in, making her question her decision once again. It was then that she heard a friendly voice calling her. "Hi, you must be Dr. Kwame's new neighbor." Amina turned to see a middle-aged woman smiling at her, a golden retriever sitting obediently beside her. "Ah yes, it's me," Amina replied hesitantly. "I'm Amina. Nice to meet you, Amina. I'm Grace Wanjiku, I live 2 houses down." The woman introduced herself warmly. "And who are these little angels?" Before Amina knew it, she was engaged in animated conversation with Grace, who seemed genuinely interested in meeting her, and the twins. To her surprise, Grace didn't ask invasive questions about her situation, just offered a warm welcome to the neighborhood. "You should join our mother's group next week," Grace suggested as they said goodbye. "We meet every Wednesday in the park. It would be great to have you there." Amina thanked her, feeling a mixture of nervousness and excitement at the invitation. As she walked home, she felt a little lighter, a little more hopeful. Back at Kwame's house, Amina put the twins to bed and decided to prepare dinner as a way of thanking Kwame for his generosity. While cooking, she couldn't help but reflect on how her life had changed in such a short time. The sound of the front door opening announced Kwame's return. He entered the kitchen, looking exhausted, but his face lit up when he saw Amina. "Something smells wonderful," he commented, leaning over to inspect the pot on the stove. "I hope you like lasagna," Amina smiled. "It's my grandmother's specialty." They sat down to dinner, falling into easy conversation about the day. Amina told Kwame about her meeting with Grace and the invitation to the mother's group. "Grace is a great person," Kwame nodded approvingly. "I think it would be good for you to connect with other mothers." There was a pause in the conversation, and Amina noticed Kwame playing with his food, looking pensive. "Is something on your mind?" she asked gently. Kwame hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Amina, I wanted to talk to you about something, about the future." Amina's heart raced. Was he regretting inviting her to stay? "I've been thinking," Kwame continued, his voice calm but with a note of nervousness. "You mentioned that you'd like to go back to school someday. I'd like to help make that possible." Amina was stunned. "What? Kwame, you're already doing so much." "Please let me finish," he said softly. "I have more than enough to support us comfortably. I'd like to pay for your studies so that you can build the future you want for yourself and the twins." Tears began to form in Amina's eyes. "Kwame, I don't know what to say. It's too much." Kwame reached across the table, taking her hand and squeezing it gently. "You don't have to decide now, just think about it. You deserve the chance to pursue your dreams." At that moment, looking into Kwame's sincere eyes, Amina felt something change inside her. It was more than gratitude. It was a deep connection, a mutual understanding that went beyond words. Later, lying in bed, Amina reflected on the day from the morning walk to dinner with Kwame. She felt as if she was on the threshold of something new and exciting. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to dream about the future, not just for the twins, but for herself too. As sleep enveloped her, Amina couldn't imagine the challenges and surprises that the coming months would bring. But one thing was certain: her life would never be the same again. Fall arrived in Nairobi, painting the streets of Karen in shades of gold and red. 3 months had passed since Amina and the twins had moved in with Kwame, and life had settled into a comfortable routine, though not without its challenges. Amina adjusted Kato's coat as she prepared to go out. It was Wednesday, the day of the mother's group in the park. These weekly meetings had become a mainstay for her, offering a chance to socialize and share experiences with other mothers. "Are you sure you don't want me to stay with the twins today?" Kwame asked, appearing in the doorway. He had taken the morning off, something he had been doing more often lately. Amina smiled, shaking her head. "Thanks, but I think we need the fresh air." Besides, she hesitated for a moment. "There's something I want to discuss with Grace." Kwame nodded, an expression of understanding on his face. Over the last few weeks, he and Amina had talked extensively about his offer to pay for her studies. After much thought, Amina had decided to accept, planning to enroll in a nursing program next semester. "Well, have fun," Kwame said, leaning over to give each baby a gentle kiss on the forehead. The gesture, so natural and affectionate, made Amina's heart flutter in a way that was becoming more and more common. In the park, Amina joined the familiar circle of mothers. Grace greeted her warmly as always, but Amina couldn't help noticing a few curious glances from the other women. "So Amina," began Stephanie, one of the more outgoing mothers in the group, "tell us more about you and Dr. Kwame. You make such a lovely couple." Amina felt her face heat up. "Oh no, it's nothing like that. Kwame and I are just friends. He's just helping us out." An uncomfortable silence fell over the group, broken only by the happy babbling of the babies. Sensing Amina's discomfort, Grace quickly changed the subject. "Amina, you mentioned you wanted to discuss something with me?" Grateful for the change in conversation, Amina explained her plans to go back to school. Grace listened attentively, offering advice and encouragement. "I think it's wonderful that you're pursuing your dreams," Grace said, with a warm smile. "And I'm sure Kwame will be more than happy to help with the twins while you study." The mention of Kwame's name made Amina pause. Over the last few months, he had become much more than just a benefactor. He was a friend, a confidant, and though she hesitated to admit it, perhaps something more. Later that day, back at the house, Amina found Kwame in the kitchen, preparing dinner. The domestic scene hit her with unexpected force: the smell of home-cooked food, the soft sound of jazz music playing in the background, Kwame with his sleeves rolled up as he stirred something on the stove. It felt right. "How was your day?" Kwame asked, looking over his shoulder with a smile. "It was good," Amina replied, placing the twins in their chairs. "I told them about college." Kwame turned fully, his face lighting up. "What did they think?" "They were very encouraging," Amina smiled. "Grace even offered to help with the twins when I need to study." "That's great," Kwame exclaimed. He hesitated for a moment before continuing. "You know, I was thinking, maybe we could hire a part-time nanny to help out. That way, you'd have more time to focus on your studies." Amina felt a twinge of guilt. "Kwame, you're already doing so much. I can't ask for more." "You're not asking," Kwame interrupted her gently. "I'm offering. Amina, seeing you and the twins happy means more to me than you can imagine." There was a moment of charged silence between them, interrupted by the sound of the oven timer. Kwame turned quickly to take out the baking sheet, breaking the tension. As they sat down to dinner, Amina couldn't help but notice how this had become their new normal family dinners. Easy conversation, Kwame's constant, comforting presence. It was more than she had ever dared to dream of for herself and her children. "Kwame," she began hesitantly, "there's something I've been wanting to ask you." He looked at her expectantly, his brown eyes full of warmth. "Why are you doing all this for me? For the twins? It's more than generosity." "Family," Kwame said softly. He put down his fork, his face taking on a serious expression. "Amina, there's something I need to tell you. Something about my past that might explain some things." Amina's heart raced as she nodded, encouraging him to continue. Kwame took a deep breath before speaking. "When my wife was pregnant with our twins, we had complications. She needed an emergency blood transfusion. I was the doctor on call that night." Amina felt her heart squeeze, anticipating where the story was going. "There was a mistake," Kwame continued, his voice breaking. "The blood type. It was a labeling error at the blood bank. I didn't realize it until it was too late." Silent tears were streaming down Kwame's face now. Amina instinctively reached out, holding his hand tightly. "I lost my family that night," he said softly. "And for years I've carried not only the pain of loss but the guilt of knowing I could have prevented it." "Oh," Kwame, Amina whispered, her own vision blurred by tears. "When I saw you that night in the hospital, alone and scared with premature twins, it was as if the universe was giving me a second chance, a chance to do things right this time." A heavy silence fell over them, weighted with the weight of revelation. Amina processed everything she had heard, her heart aching for Kwame and the tragedy he had endured. "Kwame, I don't know what to say," she finally spoke. Except thank you for trusting me with this, for everything you've done for us." Kwame squeezed her hand, a small smile crossing his face despite the tears. "You've brought light back into my life, Amina. You and the twins, you're my family now, if you want to be, of course." Amina felt as if her heart might burst. Without thinking, she stood and went around the table, enveloping Kwame in a tight hug. He hugged her back, and for a moment, the world seemed to disappear around them. When they finally pulled apart, there was a new understanding between them, a deeper connection forged by shared truths. That night, after the twins were put to bed, Amina lay awake, thinking about everything that had happened. Her life had changed so drastically in the past few months, in ways she could never have predicted. As she gazed out the window at the twinkling lights of Nairobi, Amina felt a mixture of gratitude, hope, and something else, something she wasn't yet ready to name. The future, which had once seemed so uncertain, now shone with possibilities. With Kwame and the twins, she had found more than a home, she had found a family. And while challenges were sure to come, Amina knew that together they could face anything. Winter came to Nairobi, covering the streets of Karen with a light layer of mist and cold. Inside Kwame's home, the warmth of family contrasted sharply with the chill outside. Amina, sitting at the kitchen table with books scattered around her, barely noticed the weather as she reviewed her notes. And then, the heart pumps oxygenated blood to the rest of the body, she muttered, reciting the information she had just read. The sound of children's laughter snapped her out of her concentration. In the living room, Kwame was on the floor, playing with Zuri and Kato. The twins, now 8 months old, were crawling energetically, exploring their world with insatiable curiosity. Amina smiled at the scene. In the last few months since Kwame's revelation about his past, something had shifted between them. There was a deeper intimacy, a silent understanding that went beyond words. "How's the studying going?" Kwame asked, noticing her gaze. "Fine," Amina replied, rubbing her tired eyes. "There's so much to learn, but I'm loving every minute of it." Kwame smiled proudly. "You're going to be an amazing nurse, Amina. I'm sure of it." The warmth of his words enveloped her, giving her renewed strength. Amina had started her nursing program a few weeks ago, and although it was challenging to balance her studies with motherhood, she was determined to succeed. A sharp cry from Zuri interrupted the moment. The little girl had been leaning on the coffee table, trying to get up. "Oh my God," Amina gasped, getting up quickly. She's going to before she could finish her sentence. Zuri took a faltering step, then another. Kwame, a few steps away, held out his arms encouragingly. "Come on, Zuri," he murmured. "You can do it." With a shout of triumph, Zuri crossed the short distance to Kwame, falling into his open arms. The room erupted in applause and laughter. "She walked," Amina exclaimed, tears of joy in her eyes. "Our little girl has taken her first steps." Kwame hugged Zuri, his face beaming with pride. "Did you see that, champ? You're amazing." Not wanting to be left behind, Kato began to babble anxiously, stretching out his arms to Amina. She caught him, covering his little face with kisses. "Don't worry, my love," she whispered. "Your time will come too." As the family celebrated Zuri's milestone, Kwame's phone rang. He frowned as he saw the name on the screen. "Sorry, I need to take this," he said, handing Zuri over to Amina. "It's the hospital." Amina nodded, a slight tightening in her chest. In recent months, Kwame had significantly reduced his working hours in order to spend more time at home, but sometimes duty still called at unexpected times. Kwame left the room to take the call, leaving Amina alone with the twins. She watched them play, amazed at how much they had grown and changed in such a short time. When Kwame returned, his expression was grave. "What's wrong?" Amina asked, immediately worried. Kwame sighed heavily. "There's been a serious car accident. Multiple victims, including a pregnant woman. They need me at the hospital immediately." Amina's heart squeezed. She knew how deeply cases involving pregnant women still affected Kwame. "Are you going to be okay?" she asked softly. Kwame hesitated for a moment before nodding. "I have to be. They need me." Amina stood up, still holding the twins, and approached Kwame. Wordlessly, she wrapped him in a hug, the babies nestled between them. "You're an amazing doctor, Kwame," she murmured. "Go and save lives. We'll be here when you get back." Kwame hugged her back, taking deep breaths as if gathering strength. When he pulled away, there was determination in his eyes. "Thank you, Amina," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "I don't know what I'd do without you." With one last kiss for the twins and a gentle squeeze of Amina's hand, Kwame left, leaving the house strangely silent. The hours dragged on as Amina waited for news. She tried to focus on her studies, but her mind kept drifting back to Kwame and what he might be facing at the hospital. It was almost midnight when the front door finally opened. Kwame walked in, looking exhausted but with a glint of relief in his eyes. "How was it?" Amina asked anxiously, getting up to meet him. "Difficult," Kwame replied, dropping onto the sofa. "But we managed to save the mother and the baby. It was close, but they'll be fine." Amina felt a surge of pride and admiration. Sitting down next to him, she took his hand, squeezing it gently. "You're amazing, you know that?" she said softly. Kwame looked at her, a tired smile on his face. "No, Amina. We are amazing. I wouldn't have gotten through this without knowing I had you and the twins to come home to." There was a moment of silence between them, charged with unspoken emotion. Then, almost without thinking, Amina leaned in and kissed Kwame softly. It was brief, gentle, but charged with promise. When they pulled away, they both looked a little surprised, but not sorry. I'm sorry," Amina began. But Kwame gently interrupted her. "Don't be," he said, his voice hoarse. "I've been wanting to do that for months." Amina felt her heart racing. "Me too," she admitted. "But I'm scared, Kwame. What if we ruin everything? What about the twins?" Kwame held her hands in his gaze intense. "Amina, you and the twins are the best thing that's ever happened to me. No matter what happens between us, that will never change. But if you want to try, well, I'm willing to risk it." Amina felt tears forming in her eyes. "I want to," she whispered. "I want to try." They kissed again, this time with more passion, years of pent-up emotion finally finding expression. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling, a little breathless. "So," Kwame said, a mischievous glint in his eyes, "I guess that means we have to tell the mothers group that we're not just friends anymore, huh?" Amina laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "I guess it does. Stephanie will be so pleased that she was right all along." As they snuggled on the sofa, talking about the future and the possibilities that lay ahead of them, Amina reflected on how much her life had changed. From a scared, single mother to a confident nursing student. From a stranger in a new city to part of a loving family. The road ahead was still uncertain, full of challenges and obstacles to overcome, but with Kwame by her side and the twins as her anchor, Amina knew she could face anything. Outside, the cool breeze of Nairobi's night continued to blow softly, covering the city with peace and quiet. Inside the red brick house in Karen, a new family was forming, united not by blood, but by love, trust, and the promise of a shared future. The story of Amina and Dr. Kwame beautifully reflects how Allah's wisdom and mercy can manifest in unexpected ways. As Amina faced her greatest trial, being abandoned while pregnant with twins, struggling with fear and uncertainty, Allah sent help when she least expected it. This narrative of hope and redemption mirrors the tests we all face in life, where despair and hardship may cloud our judgment, but Allah always has a plan. O Allah, you are the one who grants mercy and ease after hardship. You are the one who provides light in the darkness. We ask you to bless Amina, her twins, and Dr. Kwame for the goodness you have placed in their hearts. Strengthen their bond and make it a source of healing and hope for them and all those they encounter. Grant us patience in the face of our own trials and guide us to those who will lift us in our moments of weakness. O Allah, let us trust in your wisdom, knowing that your plans are always better than we can imagine. Amina's journey is a reminder that even in the face of loneliness, Allah provides. We are never truly alone, as Allah's presence and care are with us in every step of our journey. Whether through people, opportunities, or unexpected kindness, Allah's mercy surrounds us. May we all find the strength to persevere in difficult times And may Allah continue to place loving and compassionate people in our lives when we need them most.